Pate had scanned his patients every 6 weeks and was convinced that shrinking the white spots would not only cut down the relapses, but reverse the course of the disease. He boldly proclaimed that that the image is the disease, and he had identified the cure. He even thought he would win the Nobel Prize for it.
But the cabin in which the meeting took place belonged to another doctor, Dr. George Evers, who was far more skeptical in his interpretation of the scans. Were those spots of inflammation really the cause of the scarring of the nervous system, or merely a symptom of that scarring? Even if limiting the inflammation could reduce relapses in the short term, he was not convinced it would affect the progression of irreversible disability over the longer term, no matter how fancy the images looked.
But in the decisive meeting, the US Food and Drug Administration were persuaded by the visual impact of the scans. They accepted the image as the disease and approved the drug to treat it.
What followed was a pharmaceutical frenzy more intense than that of mesmerism. Within a year of its approval, betaseron became the most successful drug ever of the German pharmaceutical giant Schering that had acquired the drug before it hit the market. Although the FDA approval officially mandated follow-up studies to secure that the effects suggested by the images would actually manifest in the lived experience of patients, few seemed interested in this once the drugs were selling and selling and selling.
And Donald Pate's scanners went hot. While he had been paid $700,000 for performing the scans in the betaseron trial, a year later, a competing pharmaceutical offered him 10 times that amount to document the white spots on the brain on their trial participants. The MRI had become the gold standard. The pharmaceutical companies happily poured money into these images because they validated new drugs and had unlocked a quickly expanding market.
But there was also Evers. He was an undisputable authority in MS research, becoming head of neurology at Oxford University, and he set himself up as the great iconoclast, a one-man commission who spent 15 years trying to persuade the FDA, the drug company, and his colleagues to actually investigate if the image was the disease.
And believe it or not, Evers won the uphill battle. After 15 years, he convinced Schering to do a follow-up study on all the surviving patients from the original betaseron trial. He found that the MRI scans had no independent predictive value on the progression of disability, zero. The image was, in fact, not the disease.
But by this point, Evers was old, and so was betaseron. A whole new generation of drugs had entered the market, and they were said to be much more effective. Only their effect was still being evaluated with the same magnetic images.
As the years have passed, each new treatment I've been prescribed has been accompanied by new scans. And my initial fear of being looked inside of has shifted toward a fear of not being seen. Increasingly, my feeling was that all the doctors could find were the spots they had set out to see, the image of their own diagnosis,